A very popular education slot within BNI is something called the empty chair. The empty chair is an ed slot that you will see in BNI chapters from time to time when the BNI chapter committee and the leadership team realise there's a problem with attendance. That you've got members who have missed a few meetings. Maybe they've had a substitute that's let them down. Maybe they've gone on holiday and not got a sub, or maybe they've had some illnesses, and there's a few absences in the room. The committee looks at the absence figures, the leadership team looks at the absence figures, and they say, right, we need to do something about this. Let's have somebody deliver the empty chair education slot. And then a member will stand up during the meeting and they will physically see an empty chair and they will tell you all the reasons why that's bad. Why the person who should be sat in that chair should be there today to help the chapter, to listen to the weekly presentations, the featured presentation, to pass referrals, to meet visitors, all that stuff. The problem is that empty chair education slot is very, very usually delivered aimed at the people who are not in the room to hear it because they are not present. So there is no point delivering the empty chair education slot when the person you're aiming it at isn't there. So what can you do? What can you do to sort out attendance within your chapter? Well, here's the problem. Committees and leadership teams will look at their attendance figures and see that there's members that are not turning up, have missed a few meetings and they're dropping, and they're going to want to increase the attendance because it's important that your attendance is good. So they'll be tempted to do things like, let's say a member doesn't turn up one morning. Maybe he puts a message in the WhatsApp chat and says, woke up ill this morning, not going to be there, have a great meeting, thanks. And there'll be a visitor in the room that day. It's very tempting for those leadership teams or those committee members to go up to that visitor and say, would you mind subbing for this member? They're not here today. Here's their 60 seconds. Can you read that out? And that solves the problem because that member's no longer absent. They've got a substitute. And that substitute reads out their 60 seconds. They get marked as sub on the PALMS report. Therefore, the chapter didn't have an absence, it had a sub. And the absence rate looks a little better. Problem is, when you do that, you are not helping the chapter, you are not helping the member, you are not helping you. All you're doing is kicking that can a little further down the road for that problem to rear itself again the following week or 2 weeks later or a month later. Because if you've got a member who is absent and you allow a walk-in sub to do that, that's the term for it, a walk-in sub, then what you were doing is you were telling that member that that's okay. You were telling that member that it's absolutely fine that they didn't get a sub. It's absolutely fine that they didn't turn up. And you were telling all the other members in the chapter that, oh, that's absolutely fine that that guy didn't get a sub. Therefore, if I feel a little bit peaky next week or I fancy a lie-in, I can do that and they'll find somebody to sub for me. That's okay. And it's not okay because once you have a culture within the group of people knowing that it's okay not to turn up, it's okay not to have a sub, then you're going to have an absence rate that skyrockets. And it's like in a sports team. Let's say in the UK we got football, in the US maybe it's American football. In a sports team, if you have players in your team who think it's okay to turn up to training late or to not turn up at all, to have no respect for the manager, maybe they'll turn up for games late, they won't turn up for games at all, or perhaps they'll turn up and they won't put in any sort of effort or meaningful performance. How successful is that sports team going to be? Not very. In the US, they're going to have what's called a losing season. In the UK, they're probably going to get relegated. And is that manager going to keep putting those players in? Well, we want to make sure that he's there, we're going to put him in every week, it's absolutely fine. No, he's going to drop them. He's going to drop them and they're going to be moved on because they're not putting in the effort, they're not trying, they're not doing what they're there to do. Now, you could be thinking this all sounds a little bit harsh. I didn't join BNI to be told I have to turn up every week. I have to send a sub every week. I run a business. I am an adult. I can do what I want. If I'm ill, I'm ill. If I go on holiday, I go on holiday. That's my choice. And you're right, it is. But you also didn't join a BNI group, pay to be a member of a BNI group, to have all the other members not bother. You don't pay and turn up every week and make the effort and find introductions for people and work out what you're going to say on your weekly presentation and produce your featured presentation when it rolls around time to do it, and look at bringing visitors to the room, to bring them in, to introduce them to other members, to bring business to other members. You didn't do all of that just for someone to not turn up. You're paying with your money and your time. You therefore want to make sure that everybody else is putting in the same effort you are. If they're not, it's not going to work. You are not going to get your return on investment. You are not going to get the business you should be getting through your effort. So what is the solution? You need to explain to all of the members that, look, we're all in the same boat here. We are all members of this group because we want to grow our business. We are all committed. We are all going to be here every week, or we're going to find someone who can represent our business. We are going to look for referrals and introductions for people every week, and we are going to look for visitors to bring into the room. And if anybody doesn't want to do that, doesn't want to contribute, but just wants to take, then I'm sorry, this isn't the room for you. This isn't the place for you. And I know that sounds harsh. I know that sounds harsh. But it's very much like I was speaking with Dr. Ivan Meisner on a podcast I run called The Engaging Marketeer. It's on episode 27. I was speaking to Dr. Meisner, and he related BNI to gardening, essentially. You have to prune away what isn't working. You have to prune away the dead wood, the dead leaves, the dead branches. Because if they are not contributing, they are overall going to bring down the rest of the plant, the rest of the tree. And that is what a BNI group is like. If you have members who are not turning up, who are not contributing, who are not going on training, who are not bringing visitors, who are not bringing referrals, and who are not getting substitutes, the answer is not to cover that up by giving them a walk-in sub and marking them as substitute. The answer, I'm afraid, is to cut away what isn't working so that you can replace it with what is. Now, I'm sorry this was a very harsh education slot. It's not the usual education slot that I do, but it did have to be said. Thank you very much for listening.